Good morning. So we're up to Shinun Ches Seif Base. We're talking about enclosures which are mukaf ladira, not mukaf ladira. So says the Machaber in Seif Base. Umat nikra mukaf ladira. What is called an enclosure which is mukaf ladira? Zeh shebona base dira, guy who builds some sort of residence. Aisha posach lo pesach mibesei, or he opens up an opening from his house. And then he sort of fences it off. He puts an enclosure around it. Now, we're going to have a problem in this sif. He's got a residence, but it was mukaf shalol l'shem dira. It was originally set up, let's say, to be a field or something like that. And then he wants to now make it an enclosure for residential purposes. He doesn't need to knock down the whole fence and rebuild it. There's a neat solution. He can just make a smallish hole, i.e. a breach of just slightly more than 10 amas. And therefore, then the house will be open to a non-enclosed area. And then you fix it. And then you sort of stop the gap. And that way you've now considered to have fenced it up l'shem dira. Or you just do a breach a little bit more than 10, and then you build one amma to make it less than 10, so that now I've fenced it all off l'shem dira. And therefore it's considered open, and therefore it's l'soifukov, and that's okay. V'imporatz amma or godra v'chazo poratz amma. And you don't have to do it in one go. In other words, you can knock down one amma, rebuild it. Knock down an amma of the fence and rebuild it. So in total, you've now got more than an opening of 10 ammas which have been rebuilt l'shem dira. That would solve the problem. Okay, so we're rectifying a problem where it was initially enclosed shalol l'shem dira. Okay, let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Koi gama bona bias dereisha, but bona bias dereisha. We're talking. It's going on the reisha, also of where he built a house. Kolema the bona the bain shebona bias ba'isimokum v'achkach kifa. Whether he built a house and then he fenced it off la'isimokum v'nimsa bias b'msiosa, and you've got the house there is in the middle. Or bain shebona bias that's la'isimokum aposoch le'pesach achkach kifa. Or whether you built the house and then you open an opening there and then you makif it afterwards. In all those situations, you've now fenced it off l'shem dira and you've rectified it. The l'shem tashmish dira kifa, because ultimately you fenced it for the purpose of residential use. But if you've initially built a fence, some sort of enclosure, and it wasn't the l'shem dira, and then you subsequently build a house, or even if you had the house there and then you fence it off, but it wasn't a shame dira that you were going to go out of it from your house to that place, then you've got a situation of where it was fenced because it wasn't really servicing the house. If you initially built the house and with this area behind it, and that was going to be like some sort of chotzer, but you did it with that in mind, then maybe it's, there is room to be lenient and to say that this enclosure is l'shem dira, because ultimately you were makif it l'shem dira. Ve'im hoya mukaf. Now, if it was already mukaf, i.e., was already made a fence and it was not initially done l'shem dira, and now you want to change it to a fence which is l'shem dira, and therefore, what's the nafkamina if it's l'shem dira, not l'shem dira? If it's very large, if it's l'shem dira, then it can be even bigger than Beis Hasayim, and you can carry in it, no problem. Kach tzarich lema. V'cheinu b'mechaber she'ba'olas Shabbos v'cheinu patur. That's the gears that they have. V'akavona, the idea is this: she'roitz l'shtamish atzo behekav hazeh b'kvias. You now want to use this area, more regularly. And she'ena moel, but it just doesn't help you to put in the shiyamachitz asuyas l'shem zeh. But you've got to have built the wall, the fences, in order for residential use. So what do? Yifroitz, you can knock down part of the wall. You don't have to knock down the entire height of the wall. You just take away up to 10 tefachim, that would suffice. Because if it's less than 10 tefachim in its height, so that's all you need to do to make it no longer considered the wall. If it was already open by 10 amas, if it was already open 10 amas, you can just knock off a little bit more and then rebuild that extra, and then you're sorted. Because since it's so open, it's considered all the other mechitzas a bottle. It's as if it's all been knocked down. And then you rebuild it for residential use. And you don't need to knock down the entire wall. So too, if you want to do a Tzuras HaPesach there as well, that's no longer considered a breach. Even if you knock down a little bit, you can just rebuild that amount, and that would suffice. Until you've completed it, so you've now got an area of more than 10 amas. And then we said Mutter was going on this last case of the Mechaba, that if you don't have to do the whole thing in one go, you can do an Amma, rebuild it, etc. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Sifkat and Chavches, the Loyam Rinan, Kivan, the loy parats hasor b'basachas, and we don't say that since you didn't knock down 10 amas in one go, for lo godar b'basachas lo have a heck of the shem dira. We don't say that. Elakim the hashtam mia have a chidush elek of b'yosim esa. Since in total you've rebuilt it, albeit one am at a time, to more than 10 amas, choshev hekaf l'shem dira is considered a hekaf l'shem dira. Okay, so that's the machaba. Again, we're talking about a situation where you want to rectify your fence. Your fence was done l'shem dira, and now you want to rebuild it l'shem dira. You don't have to knock down the whole thing. You can knock down just a little bit more than 10 amas. You've been mevatel all the other mechitzas, and then you rebuild it l'shem dira, or even if you do one amma at a time, as we just said. Now, says the Ramah, v'im hagot, v'im kosher olav, what if you've got a heavy brick wall and knocking it down is not so straightforward? So there's another eitzah. What do you do? What you can do is you can build a little mound of earth on either side of the wall to the effect that the height of the wall is now no longer 10 tefachim high. The width of this offer that you're depositing there is got to be at least 4 tefachim, ba'irach esa amas, with a length of 10 amas, ba'irach hakoisel, the length of the wall. V'im begova offer esa, and if the height of the offer is not 10, imkein harikilo parat shamakoisel, as if you've breached the wall, which is what you're trying to achieve. Even though the wall physically is standing there, you've sort of negated the shame koisel that it has. Because you've raised the ground on either side with offer, and therefore it's just like a little, small wall which is smaller than 10 tefachim. So you've negated this shame koisel. And even if you later take away the offer, since you've mevatlit for at least one Shabbos. For one Shabbos, it was no longer considered the wall. That suffices. That it can't just be for a temporary deposit of offer there. It's got to be more permanent for you to call it no longer a wall. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah. Yesh Omrim, the Yochel Choftes. The total height of this wall has got to be less than 20 tefachim. Because it's just not going to work. Because you're trying to reduce the wall to less than 10 tefachim, and you can't make the offer more than 10 tefachim. So we're talking about a wall of not more than 20 tefachim. Mishnei Sodim, you put offer on either side of the wall. Kadesh yispatel ha-mechitza, you'll be mevatel the mechitza, which is the wall. Shariyesh dris saregel mikarka karkav luchuz the because you can just basically walk over it. It's the height of this table, 10 tefachim. It's not so high. So it's less than that. Ad yismaid, you lower it, and it's as if halachically it's parrots in this particular spot. V'im kain yochel ata livnei sham beis dira, or lifteach sham pesach midirasai, or you could somehow make a new fence. Lo hay sham pasuach lekabim bekvar, v'achach shefana offer domi kamoy hekav achach pesach mitchila. It's as if you've rebuilt it, l'shem dira. It's a very neat solution of the Ramah. Reichav Amarba, and the earth that you put there has got to be at least 4 tefachim wide. Tzarich leima Reichav Arba. V'hatam the papachas me'arba ein a roi lamed olav ulisakev. It's not really significant, and therefore it won't do the job. But Erech Eser, and the earth that you deposit there has got to be not only 4 tefachim wide, but on a stretch of 10 amas. Tzarich leima ba'erech yosem Eser. De'oz le'echashev pesach el pirza, because then. Because then it's considered not a little opening into this area, but rather it's a pirza, it's a total breach, and therefore you can now subsequently rectify it. And now it's considered fenced l'shem dira. Lamadalad v'im be'gova. If the height of the wall is not what do we say? Where is this going on? Lamadalad. V'im be'gova offer also. Yeah, if the earth is not more than 10 tefachim. Then it would work. The whole way this is going to work, if the total height of this wall that you're trying to reclassify is not more than 20 tefachim, because then you take earth on either side of the wall, which is less than 10 tefachim, that would work. And therefore you can still, it works because you've got less than 10 tefachim. That sort of negates the height of the wall, and if the total height was 20 tefachim, then you've reduced it to less than 10 tefachim and job done. You only reckon the height of the wall from the height of this mound of earth you've deposited there. Because the tal, the top of the mound of earth you've deposited there, is considered the top of the karka of the chotzer, whatever it is. And since you no longer have 10 tefachim worth of wool, you've got a wool which is totally breached open, and therefore you've achieved your aim. Good. Now, even if you then take away the offer which you've used to lower the height of the wall and to create a pirza in this wall, even if you subsequently take it away, so long as you leave it there for 1 Shabbos. That was the first opinion of the Ramah. Halosh Megumgum, the actual language used is a bit confused. Because of course you're going to have to take it away. That was the whole point. Because otherwise you can't move it there, because you've got a big pirza there. V'ayin be'el Rabbi b'shem malbush yom tov shekosur shetzorech loyme va'af shechayze. Rotzoloyme va'af shechayze v'lokeach ha'ofer kadei sheyizgalu ha'mechitzas mechodosh l'shem dira. Even though when you remove the offer to now expose the walls have been constructed l'shem dira, mikol mokom lo amrin mishum zeh ha'ofer lo nizbatzim li'olam klal mishum shedayto hilachs lefnoson. That was your intention. Kim dal kol ponim. But bitlom l'Shabbos achas, because at the end of the day they were there for 1 Shabbos, and therefore that's considered effective. And you had a pirza, you've removed the offer, you've reclassified this wall as dan l'shem dira, and therefore you are okay. Hoyel bitlo l'Shabbos achas hainu b'fiv, even if you do it verbally, or when you do it verbally, that's how you need to designate it. And then we said Lamed Zayin. The Yesh Cholkim and says no. The offer lo have a bittul elim kain ein lasid lifnosa la'olam. Says the Mishnah Lamed Zayin Pirush ba'ofen kazeh shedaita lefanosa, when you intend to remove it away. Elim kain ein osid l'tzorich levat lebeferish la'olam. You need to designate it there for permanent placement, that the offer is there forever. V'ayim b'achreinim shedaitim lahiris kasvara kama lahakel. We are maker like the first opinion, that you just need to leave it there for 1 Shabbos. He argues with this din generally. Now Sivvov, basically has another eitzah. Again, what are we trying to do over here? We're trying to make a house which has got some sort of enclosure, and we said yesterday that if the enclosure is l'shem dira, it can be as big as you want. But if it's not l'shem dira, then it's got to be less than base of Simon. You can't. Then if it's not, you can't carry more than daladamas. So you've got a wall there, but it wasn't done l'shem dira. So this sif is trying to reclassify that wall. That you're trying to do it by either making a breach and then rebuilding it, or whatever it may be. Or according to this eitzah, you bring earth on either side of it. You make the wall quite low, and that's considered a breach. And then you take the earth away, and here you go. You've got a wall l'shem dira. That was the solutions we're talking about. Now in Sivov, later on we say you can build a mechitza near that wall, and that negates the wall that was originally there. That's going to come up in Sivov, but that's what he's talking about here. Ulefi hamavur b'Sivov, just doing the last couple of lines in Mishmura. Ulefi hamavur b'Sivov yesh eitzah shelo yistarach lifras hakoisel. There's another eitzah, you have to knock down the wall at all. What is that? Tahanu sheyasem mechitza she gavoya asar tefachim ba'orach yesem e'esa amas u'rechokim min shlosh tefachim. You just build another big wall next to that problematic wall. Ach kol ze in the moel gam kein rak be'es shemedes hamachitza avlo le'achar shenofle. It only helps you when that wall that you've put there is there. The yachs l'isura, because once it's there, it's no longer there. Yachs l'isura, you've got the original problem. Because that hasn't changed. The original wall was not mukaf l'dira, and just because you put a wall 3 tfachim, or close to it, and that negates the original wall, that's fine, only as long as that second wall is there. But once the second wall is not there, you're back to the original problem, namely the original wall is not mukaf l'dira. Okay, that we'll talk about Mr. Hashem in Sif Vov later on. Okay, Kol Tov.